2, 1.
Ow!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Hear This podcast. We're so excited to be hanging out this week. I'm here with the two and only Tony Lyon and Pastor Zach Schultz.
Welcome
How's it
back,
going?
Pastor Zach.
Yes.
Thank you.
We missed you around here.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's so
Oh.
good to be back.
Welcome back.
Where did I go?
Where did you go?
I'm just kidding.
Who knows?
Where did you
Nowhere.
come from? Where did you go? Cotton Eye
Cotton
Joe.
Eye Joe.
I'm going to crank out the song references today. This is the musical edition of the Hear This podcast. Ugh, nothing.
Don't lie. You
Jeez.
told me.
I did. Okay, I did. Elise and
You're
I have
just
been
ashamed,
watching.
aren't you?
No, I didn't think about it. Elise and I have been watching Avatar, The Last Airbender.
So is
the
Adam.
TV series. Really?
And he tried to get me to watch it, and I didn't like
You
it.
refuse?
I
refused
watched
as
two
well.
two episodes, and I didn't do
I
it.
feel like that makes me a better boyfriend than you are a wife. She convinced me to do it, though, is what I'm saying.
Oh.
Because I'd never seen it, like
so
when I
what
was
we're
a kid.
all saying is Elise is just way cooler than all of
Yes. She's really going to like that I said all of this. She's going to text me later.
Wait.
She's
Does
gonna
she
be like,
listen?
Yeah.
Dude, that's,
Every week.
zoom in. That's Tyson's "I'm lying"
That's
face.
a lie. face. Look at. Here's take your face. Look his nose.
Okay,
There it
nice.
is.
I love how in sync that was. Have you guys practiced
We
that?
have been.
So much.
Nice.
We've been texting back and forth all morning long. Like,
About
how
how
can
we
we make
can
fun of
Tyson
Tyson?
Make fun of
lies.
Tyson.
Tyson always makes fun of us. This is our time to make fun of
It's
you,
our time to
Tyson.
shine. Hey, everybody. I just want to welcome you back to phase 3 of quarantine.
Woo!
We're stepping
Boo.
back a phase. So this is the time now where I just like to talk about the fact that we're going back into like old school quarantine hairstyles. Do you have a go-to quarantine hairstyle that?
Do you want to see it?
Sure.
Yes.
This is. I'm gonna have to describe it for those of us who listen on Apple
Right.
Podcasts. Okay, Tyson is taking the
Top.
top third of his hair, and pulling it really, really tight, like too tight, like he's gonna get a headache tight. And just wrapping that elastic around like 20 times, probably. I rounded up,
Aw.
3.
and now it is in this elegant little pony on the.
It's a little top knot.
It's a little squish.
That's
Oops.
that's really cute, Tyson.
Thank you.
Is it though?
No.
Yeah, Zach, what's your quarantine hair?
Honestly, the opposite of Tyson. Like this. Ready?
Rapunzel,
Wow.
Rapunzel.
My hair's getting like long.
I would just like to
And
say.
then I just, like,
Oh,
leave-
that-
dang.
I feel weird about the fact that you are wearing a ponytail in your hair,
Mm-hmm.
and you were wearing a ponytail in your hair, and me, the female, was not.
Dude, I'll tell you
don't-
this. I've gained a
That's
lot
subscribe.
of sympathy for my wife and females out there. Having long hair is rough.
Thank you.
Long
I
haired
understand.
people
Like,
represent.
seriously, Brittany would always be like, "Man, my hair's just giving me a headache," and I'm like, "What? How can your hair give you a headache?" And then
Absolutely.
I have long hair. I'm like, "Oh, my hair gave me a headache."
Yeah.
Then Brittany goes, "Suck it up." I'm like,
Mm.
"I deserve that."
No, I'm telling you, there's a reason. Have you guys ever seen me wear like high ponies or things? I never
No.
do, and there's a reason I get headaches.
Don't really know what a high pony is, if I'm being honest.
Tyson's. Well, what you do? I don't ever wear my hair like you.
No, that's
you
a man
ha-
bun,
I don't ever wear
not a high pony, Tony.
female
Come on.
buns. I don't do that. Headaches are the worst.
Amen to that.
She's
My
no high
quarantine
pony
hair
Tony.
is this. Sometimes I don't brush it, and I just put a hat right on top.
Nice.
What's up, hats?
Ooh, my other one is I have like a little hairband, like Adam wears when he's running. I'll just put that on.
That's amazing.
So I just walk around. Ben called me a housewife the other day. 'Cause
Well,
I was just
that
walking around
feels
with
right.
that. Yeah.
Jackson wants to chime in. Jackson?
So the episode that Zach was referencing regarding the bro tanks,
Oh,
Yeah.
I
the
saw
first
that one.
season, episode 8.
Yes.
Yeah. Right after the episode 7 and right before 9.
Here's the thing. Tyson only
Wow.
started listening when he came on the show. True?
I listened to qualify because sort of true. I listened to the episode that you guys put my ads for Rocky's windshield repair service in because I was really excited to see how you read those lines.
That's amazing.
Good
That's
work.
amazing. In all seriousness, though, here we are back again in a more stricter quarantine. And just a moment of honesty. Are you going to put your hair back in?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Zach's going to fix his hair. You can't, for all you listening, you can't see this, but a moment of honesty is that for me, it's really one of my like biggest struggles in life is kind of sitting with hard feelings instead of just like immediately talking about what the positive thing is or the silver lining. And it's really difficult for me to kind of sit and reflect and ponder on about the fact that sometimes life isn't fun and it gives us hard things. So we wanted to take a little bit of a moment today to talk about what you all and what we, even as adults, might be thinking about this quarantine time. And I'm going to take credit for Tyson's thing again. I found this really great article. It's great.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time researching about, just things that teenagers are thinking and going through. And I found an article about kind of the common difficult questions that that youths are asking right now. And so we thought we'd talk about some of those things today.
Great idea, Tony.
But really, it was Tyson who found those. I'll actually give him credit.
Can I chime in really quick?
Sure.
I think it'd be interesting to know, like, again, these are 4 questions that kind of surfaced in when they polled young people. But I think it'd be interesting to know. We'll put a question box on the gram. What questions are you struggling with? Do you think are important? And again, this is what a survey said, but we want to hear back from you.
What questions have you like been asking yourselves, or maybe you've been afraid to ask people around you, but that question's still burning there in your head,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult questions.
Make a fake Instagram with your name not associated to it. Call it anonymous and then a series of numbers, and send us that question if you're afraid to ask it, and we will answer as soon as we decide you're not trying to scam us.
Wow, Tyson, I feel like that's not the first time, clearly, that you've
Done that before.
done something like this before.
How many
That-
Instagram
Hey.
accounts do you have?
How many? Let me ask you this: how many YouTube subscribers do you guys think you have?
We have
Because-
54. Thank you, Tyson.
Yeah.
You're
And
welcome.
Ryan's mom.
Oh man. Yeah, so here we are again, back in quarantine, back with hard feelings. And the reality is we don't know how long we're going to be how long this current reality is going to last. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I mean, I was 20 years old when we started this.
You were 20 years old. Yeah.
And now you're 21.
Now I'm 21. It just seems like ages ago. You know?
I mean it could be a while.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could be a while.
No, in all seriousness, I mean, a lot of people, this is like super formative times for a lot of young people.
Yeah.
And like you think about the fraction of their life that is spent in this is a very large fraction.
Mhm.
And with us moving backwards right now, who knows how long it's going to last? Like if this is a year of our lives, that could be like I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big deal to me, you know, and living somebody who's only lived 8 years or 12 years, like it's an even bigger thing.
Yeah. And the reality that like the lessons that we learned the first time in quarantine aren't over. Like we're going to have to be
Yeah.
revisiting those
Yeah.
things. Common history phrase
Boom.
is that it's about like not repeating the past, right? You learn the past so that you don't repeat it, but there's often a lot of value in kind of revisiting and sitting with the past and making sure that you learn the lessons that are being offered by this season right now. So, Zach, I'll let you take a question. Why don't you take a question?
Do you want me to ask it or answer
Yeah,
it?
why don't you ask it?
Okay. How are we reacting to different aspects of the lockdown?
Tyson?
Just trying to adapt. You know, I had the thing that sort of made it really real for me yesterday was I was headed to an open mic, and I was just like, you know, they announced the move back last Monday, and so they didn't really have time to adjust to it. I don't know what it's going to look like, and so I checked the Facebook page, and it was canceled. And so, you know, for me, that's a big creative outlet for me. It's sort of how I a way that I fulfill that part of my call. And so I just had to kind of figure out like, okay, what else can I do to sort of fill that void? So I ended up working on some like other writing material that I've been doing. But it's just trying to, we have all these voids open up, you know, our life kind of becomes Swiss cheese. And then it's trying to find the things that we can do to fill those back up.
Yeah.
Swiss cheese. That's a good metaphor.
That is.
Thank
Thou
you.
preach.
Yeah.
Would you like to take credit for that, Tony? If you maybe next week you can talk
I'll
about
think about it. We'll see how much other people like it, and if other people like it, I'll take credit for
Okay.
it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Life is kind of like Swiss cheese.
Oh,
And-
interesting.
Oh, we got played, Tyson.
No,
I think the biggest thing that I'm struggling with is the fact that I have to, not that I wasn't conscientious of this before in the last like month or so when things seem to be better, but all over again, like I'm dealing with this anxiety and fear of, not for myself, but for the people around me, if like I'm going to be hurting them by going out in public or even wearing a mask. I'm going home to visit my parents this weekend. And my parents are, listen, do not ever tell my mom that I said this.
She
Jana,
doesn't
if
listen.
you're
Nope,
listening.
she's not listening.
I'm
Just
so
use
sorry.
that skip forward 20
But they
seconds button.
are, my mom is turning 60 this week. And so they're in that kind of more vulnerable category.
Yeah.
So the thought of, like my niece and I are going to go to the water park tomorrow. And the thought that like I could be carrying something home that's going to expose my parents is scary to me. Like,
For sure.
let's just call that what it is. Like that's scary.
Absolutely.
That's scary. So that's, for me, I think that's been the biggest thing, is kind of going back to that place of fear, which is not a healthy place to be at. But like, if I'm honest, that's where I'm at right now.
Totally. By nature, I'm like a negative person. And so if I'm being,
Wow.
I
Really?
know. Tony's like, tell me something I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So the last couple months have been extremely difficult for me because it's just been so depressing, like so heavy in many respects. But something I am looking forward to is I believe that we're always being shaped and formed into something. What that is I don't know. Like, but through the decisions we're making, things that happen to us, we're being shaped and formed into something. And so what I'm excited about is to see how this experience shapes and forms us as people in the future. Tyson and I are reading a book right now, and it's giving this large historical overview, and we're in the medieval times era right now.
Why is this the first time hearing of this?
It's about pastor
Yeah, it's
stuff.
about
You wouldn't like
pastoring.
it. It's
Excuse me?
boring.
but that was like my wondering, like in 50 years, 100 years, as historians look back, how is this event in history going to shape and form the people we're becoming? And for me, as I switched my mindset into a negative of like, this sucks, this is the worst thing ever, I can't see people, and I tried to look at life in a different perspective, it really helped me. And I'm not excited to be in this, but I'm excited to see what we're like on the other end.
Kind of like
Absolutely.
looking at it as an opportunity for growth, or
Yeah, both, I think. It's just personally challenging, but growth as well.
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like you said, you took like the personal approach, but like systematically, I think about how I teach history, right? So what are they going to say about this time? What is going to be written about this time in textbooks that will come out in the future?
Yeah.
And whether you agree with all the things that are going on or not, that this is a watershed time that is going to have big system changes for not just America, not just our city, but like the world. And so kind of knowing that there isn't a return to normal, if you will, the old normal, like for better, for worse, does not exist anymore. There's no going back to that. So kind of being prepared and kind of sitting with the fact that there is no return to normal and that things are going to look different from here on out.
Exactly. Which I think is exciting.
Yeah.
Like, it's but it's that fear,
Yeah.
that you talked about. It's the unknown. As someone who likes to know as much as I can know, that part's a little bit scary. But I think that's also the cool thing is we're writing history. And I think that's a challenge as well, right? Is like, how are we learning to embrace this for change for the future, and how are we being agents of hope and some of those things.
So that was one of the first kind of questions, of those big questions, is how are we or you reacting to different aspects of the lockdown to kind of take a turn. The next question is, what is the importance of real life friendships? So I think the emphasis here is on like real life, right?
Yeah.
Tyson, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to Tony's fantastic metaphor about the Swiss cheese, that I think that we're noticing what we're missing more than ever. And so, like, I mean, I know that it took me a few weeks to realize that, like, oh, I'm feeling a particular way. Why am I feeling this way? It's because I don't have this. I have too much of this. Like, all these things are happening. So then we notice sort of by negation. So, yeah, I think friendships in real life, I mean, it's different for everybody. You figure out on an individual basis what you need from people, what fills you up. But it is one of those things that, like Zach was talking about, being able to see people. It changes us. Like it makes a difference. And I think this is a time that we learn about that, like what that means for us on a particular level. Who are we in relation to others, and what does that mean? I think the one thing that everybody can agree on is that it is important. So, like, what is the importance of real life friendships? Yes, but like then, I don't know. We need to build from there and learn about ourselves. I think that's one of the things that's really cool about this time is like, as far as being formed, is we have a lot of time to learn about ourselves and what makes us tick on an individual level.
I think this could be one of those silver lining things that, like, how are we being shaped and formed that could potentially change. One of my favorite authors says that balance is found when the pendulum swings from one extreme to the other. And so something that I've been learning about real life friendships is how much I took for granted. Just the availability of people. But not only that, it was like, I really don't need people because I have social media or I have these other outlets. But as we talk about all the time, that the theory and the idea of crowded loneliness, right? We have so many friends on social media platforms, but we're still lonely and we're still craving true, authentic relationships. And I can't help but think, through being in isolation, because that's what we've been in, is isolation, we're going to re-find the value of interpersonal relationships with other people. And my hope and prayer is that they become authentic relationships and that we don't use relationships for our advantage like we so often do. What about you, Tony?
I'm sitting here stuck in my head about this question. Because I guess for me, and probably for you guys too, because we all spend so much time clearly around young people, is my heart just hurts for those young people who find maybe the reality that their friendships were not as strong as they thought that they were, and find themselves maybe without friendships, or realizing that, like the online, like what you just talked about, the crowded loneliness, like the wave of realization that maybe that they are more lonely than they thought that they were. And so my brain just went to kind of just feelings of overwhelming sadness for that fact and wanting to help it. And I mean, the reality is that I don't know how to do that. But if you find yourself, if you're one of those people, if you're listening and you are one of those people right now that's hurting and you're lonely and you need a friend, please reach out.
Yeah.
Reach out to Zach. Reach out to me. Reach out. Tyson. Reach out to
Yeah.
Tyson. Let us
Double
know
check
if
first.
if that's you. Let us know.
Yeah, because I think you're right. And what I didn't read in this question, just because the context was what a real friendship is, because I immediately went to like face to face, but even face to face, I think hard times are where friendships are really not only tested but also made.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there are a lot of people that bail when times get tough, and so times like these can be really formative for those relationships. But my dad used to say when I was a kid that you can pick your friends. My friend's parents told him something that I thought was like a really, really profound way of saying that, which was, it's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies.
Say it one more time.
It's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies.
Wow, I'm just really glad that I just came up with that statement.
Fantastic job, Tony. Once again, she's done it.
I'm just kidding. No, that's really good.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna need to write that down somewhere. That's really good. Your grandparents came up with that?
No, my friend Chris's parents.
Your friend? Okay.
And I should say too that this is a translation. They said it in Spanish, but 4 quarters, 100 pennies was the idea.
Por favor.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not gonna try. I'm not gonna try and have it recorded on the internet forever to humiliate me in the future. I'm gonna say, send a text to Chris if you want to hear it. No. Yeah. So next question we have is this question was really interesting to me because I think that we need to define the terms first, which is an idea that I had all on my own. How do we develop a personal rather than a collective faith? So I guess the first question to talk about there then is like, what does it mean to have a personal and what does it mean to have a collective faith?
Yeah. You want me to chime in?
Absolutely. No, I'm sorry. No talking from you
okay.
right now. Yeah.
Go for it, Tyson. I'll defer to you. So I think back of like the adage we've always heard of like, you got to make your faith your own. Like, it's not your parents' faith. And I think for us, so often we are a community of faith. Like, we have these experiences together. And often those are the things we point to as very formative in our life. And we need to continue to have those things and those experiences together. But often we define them in those terms. Yeah. And so when all of those things are taken away, what are we left with? Are we left with a faith that can withstand the test of time? Or am I dependent upon Tony and other people? But with that being said, I think there has to be some type of balance between the two, because I have to continue to be the sole provider of my faith formation. But I also need other people speaking truth and love and grace into my life. And so I think how I interpret the question is, it's both and, but how am I taking charge of my own spiritual life? That's kind of how I read into the question. Sure.
Yeah. And I think you talked earlier about like that pendulum, right? And finding balance. And I think, especially for those of us, I include myself in this, who spend so much time in church community. Yeah. Like a lot of time in church community. Right that it's really easy for my faith to become for me to swing too far to the collective faith piece. Yeah. And that when that piece is gone, just kind of like you said, it's just like, whoa, what's there, right? So I know that for me, like, I've had to this has been a big thing for me in the past couple weeks, is definitely realigning and trying to figure out, trying to recap some of those personal things that for me I get lost with.
Yeah.
I get lost with doing so much activities around the church. So as far as developing that goes, I mean, really the first step to fixing anything is knowing where you're at, right? Yeah. So just taking the kind of spiritual temperature, if you will, about how your personal spiritual life is doing and how your collective spiritual life is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah. I don't know, Tyson, what do you think?
Well, can I just add to something what you're saying? I think the other thing that's a little bit interesting too is, right, like we go to church, and we often say at Tree City Church and in the youth group, we are the church, right? But we get our spiritual fix, so to speak, in the collective. And so we don't need to read our Bibles. We don't need to pray.
Exactly.
Because we do that at church.
Right.
We do it once a week. We do it twice a week. You know, and so, but I think this season has really gone when some of those things are taken away and it looks different.
Yeah.
Then what are we left with? Kind of going back to your question, and that's challenging and convicting, even for me as someone who's constantly thinking about what's next, what's the movement, where are we going in this series. Like, there's a difference still between preparing for a lesson, that's reading my Bible, but also self-care. And so there's kind of weird tensions in all of that as well. Like, we can have really good traits and habits, but there's also the self-care part that's really important in all of this.
Absolutely. So just to like reassert, if you are listening and you find that this speaks to you, that you've been taking your temperature in these past couple weeks, and you find that the reading that you get it isn't as good as you thought that it was. Just first of all, know that that's okay. That's okay. I don't have any other words other than to say that that's okay. Don't feel shame about that. You can grow, and God's not done with you yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think man, this ties into the things we were talking about before as well. That like we have something missing now, and we have our collective aspect of our faith missing. And I think going back to what Zach said about it being a both and, that like, I mean, a personal faith rather than a collective faith, I think is a bad way to phrase a question, because it is both. We have a personal faith, we have a collective faith, because it's a question of who we are, right? And Tony, my history buff, like you of course know this awesome Tertullian quote, right? Unus Christianus,
What's up,
say it with
Tertullian?
me.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
can't
Unus
say it.
Christianus, nullus Christianus, right? So one Christian is no Christian. Like we are individuals. We are like made in the image of God, but also we see God more fully in a community of believers. I talked about a couple of weeks ago in youth group about the Mosaic nature of Christianity, where I like reflect the image of God, Tony reflects the image of God, and Zach reflects the image of God, and all together we reflect that picture even more clearly. So then how do we...
Tyson.
Thanks. It was your idea.
You said it.
But how do we fill that void when we are separated from our community in some senses? And so, I think this is a fantastic time to do what Tony was worried about doing earlier, of skipping right to the bright side of the terrible situation. This is a great time to work on our personal faith. And to work on, I mean, one of the things I noticed right away was my rhythms just were gone when all of this happened. So creating new rhythms of having your devotional time. I journal for so long now. I have, this is the first time in my life I have like a written out prayer list of things that I pray for. And like I spend so much time in that every day, and just reading my Bible. Like it's a great time where you can set up these rhythms and build those habits before everything goes crazy. Get that at the top of your priority list. Which is tough, but this is a good time.
I think one interesting thing about this season is it's really challenged us to do a personal audit inventory of our life, right? And the things that we thought that were important maybe aren't as important anymore, you know? And I think that's what I've learned a lot through this season is some of the things that I chose to value, maybe they weren't that valuable, and they didn't help me grow a ton. And so it's been interesting as I personally have been kind of evaluating like what's important, like what are the negotiables and non-negotiables in our family's life, in my faith, in my work, and all of those things. And I think for me personally, that's been kind of another silver lining, so to speak, is it's really challenged me with what's important and to cut some of the crud, clutter, whatever else you want to call it. That was just taking up time and space in my life. And so what about you guys in this season? What have you found important in life?
Literally like one of the hardest questions ever.
Yes.
Not
the
just
only
something
question, really.
The only that philosophers and religions have asked each other
I've
for
written every essay about this.
thousands of years. But okay, we'll answer it in like 5 minutes if you ask us.
I don't know. I mean, this would be a good time to tune out from the podcast if you're not wanting to listen to the next 45 minutes of it.
I thought you were going to advertise for a philosophy major.
Well, yes, of course, that would be I was going to have that as my concluding paragraph. Sort of like, if you liked this, yeah. It's sort of like the Amazon suggestion. I did like if you liked all of these points,
Yes.
you might be interested in a philosophy major.
Being a philosophy major.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about this is a question of who are we?
Yeah.
What does it mean not only to be like a human being, but to be Pastor Zach, to be Tony, to be Tyson? And I think a lot of that we wrestle with on an individual basis, and we figure out, like, what are the things that God put in me to figure out, to wrestle with? But also, I mean, we've talked about this is a really good time to discover that apophatically, like by negation, what is important because I don't see it right now, and then how can I fill that up? How do we fill in? What was it, Tony? The metaphor that you said?
It was Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese. That's it. Yeah. How do we fill in the holes with Swiss cheese?
Swiss cheese.
So yeah, I mean things like relationships with people. This is like my cheesy business card thing. I think that as humans, like we are supposed to create, relate, and redeem, and that's like that's how we participate in the building of the kingdom. And I think that's sort of what satisfies our nature.
Yeah.
So, I mean that's worked out as human beings and individually. Like I've noticed my friendships are really important. My family is really important. And I've got to work on that a lot since, I spent a couple of months at home. My creativity is important. And sometimes that's hard for me to like it's life-giving, but it takes investment. So I have to reach that threshold of how much life I can put in to get the return. But, working on comedy and things like that. And then, how can I build up others? How can I make a difference in something that's larger than myself? So those are sort of my, I don't know, the things that I'm wrestling with. I think these questions are too big for us to have answers for, but we can maybe ask more specific questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Similar. I mean, I found myself thinking about like a metaphor that you're welcome to. It's not the cheese metaphor, but one that was used in the Bible a lot was like the tree, and I am the vine, and you are the branches. And I kept thinking as I was this question, it's like, well, what's important is your image of God within yourself, right? Like the health of who I am and who I am in God, and caring about the things that I care about, and like all of that being balanced internally. But also what's important in life is the external part of that, right? Is that it doesn't just stay there, is that it goes somewhere and does something and helps somebody or helps redeem the world,
Let's
if you
talk
will.
about virtue ethics. Yo, Aristotle, let's bring it in.
Okay.
Philosophy major.
I don't know about that stuff, but so I guess what is important in life, I think that I've just been like really, really reaffirmed that it's one of those, you need to be okay and healthy and grounded in order to help and do other things. And that's a big lesson for my whole life, but I really think that it's a lesson for all of us right now, especially as we're in a world there's a lot of strife and hard, awful things going on in our world right now.
Totally.
Awful things. And finding that balance between wanting to help. Yeah. But if you push too hard sometimes to the helping part of that, you neglect what's inside and taking care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so that balance between making sure that you're okay and grounded and rooted and you're valuing the important things and then doing something about it is I think just huge, especially for right now when the world feels crazy.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, your actions flow out of your character.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's like one thing that like now it feels like when we spend so much time with ourselves, because that's one thing I've noticed is I spend a lot of time with myself, that you can't escape that anymore.
Yeah.
Like when I wake up and I'm in a bad mood, I'm not reacting to anybody else. Whereas like it was easier before to be like, oh, I'm in a bad mood because this guy said this thing to me or whatever. Now it's like if I wake up in a bad mood, I have to be like, oh, what is it about? What did I do to like make myself feel like this?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like, what's important in life? Exercise,
Yeah.
eating right, like just like getting enough sleep, get like these things, and then like I noticed like how important my time with God is for like my general demeanor. And so yeah, I think like we spend so much time with ourselves. It's hard to like, I think almost impossible to avoid the fact that you are like responsible for taking care of your character, and your actions will flow out of that.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Zach?
Yeah. Everything we said today. I mean, like, honestly, I feel like it's very redundant in answering this question. Just the importance of self-care, doing these types of internal audits and being honest with ourselves and who we are and who we're becoming, and my family. Those are important things. And I mean, just time I'll never get back.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day I went back to work from working at home, and Jones was bawling, asking me to like, just, and it's just like those things. That's what's important to me. And
making your son cry.
Exactly. But also, you don't realize how much you miss and need something until it's gone. And community, and that online is great, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
Yes.
Thank you
Shout
so
out to
much.
TED Talks. They're pretty great.
They are. Check out some TED Talks.
Yeah, thanks for coming and sitting with kind of this tough but necessary reflection about what's going on right now with quarantine and kind of the reality of our world. We appreciate you listening. And if you hear nothing else from what we talked about today, know that God loves you. God loves you right where you are.
Yeah.
No other explanations needed. God loves you. That you're loved by God, and you're loved by your youth staff and all three of us here. And to reach out if you need something. We love you guys so much. Have a good week. Can't wait to see you next week. Until next time.
You're loved.
Bye.